Hi, I'm David Stein on Money for the Rest of Us, and in this video, I answer the question, what determines long-term economic growth, and what happens if your population is shrinking? Long-term economic growth, we measure that growth, the growth in the economy, is a measure of the output. What it can be produced, or what is produced in terms of goods and services in a given country. And that measure is known as the gross domestic product. And in order for an economy to grow, we can think of it just like a business. If a baker or a bakery wants to grow, they need to produce more output. And the way that they do that is they can have more workers, or they can be more efficient and produce more per worker that they have. And the economy works the same way. Long-term economic growth is determined by how big is the working age population. Is the number of workers growing over time? The second thing is how productive are those workers? Are they able to produce more through just becoming smarter? One of the things that you find out is as the average working age increases, countries become more productive because workers are able to use the technology. They just have more skills and more knowledge, and they're able to produce more. So those are the two things you need. You need a growing working age population, or more workers that are of working age, and you need more productivity. Now, here's the thing. World population is expected to continue to grow. In fact, by the year from 2016 through 2050, it's supposed to grow by 28%. But there's a number of countries where their population is expected to decrease or shrink by over 10%. Japan is the leading one. Their population is expected to go from 128 million inhabitants today down to around 88 million in 2050. Other countries that are expected to have a smaller population by 2050 include Germany, Thailand, Poland, Hungary. It's amazing. And when you look at Japan, we'll use that as a case study, their unemployment rate is 2.8%, one of the lowest in the world. There's jobs for people, but the population is shrinking. And one of the things you see is by 2050, only about 49% of the population will be working. That compares to the rest of the world where 63% of a given country's population will be working. So what are the consequences of that? Well, if that 49% of the population can't produce enough goods and services to satisfy the 51% that are retired, plus for their own needs, then that could lead to capacity constraints, and that could lead to much higher inflation than Japan has today. So that's the biggest risk. There's not enough workers to produce what everyone needs. How can this be solved? Well, one way is the number of women in the workforce in Japan could grow. Right now, only about 48% of women in Japan work versus 57% in the US. So as more women could enter the workforce and their culture could change to accept that, that would certainly help with this shrinking number of workers. The other thing would be immigration. Japan has always been somewhat hesitant to bring in foreign workers. Now they have what are known sort of these intern type programs. I mean, they're getting more relaxed, but it's very difficult to go to Japan and get a job if you weren't born in Japan. So they need more lax immigration. That would be another way to solve this problem. And finally, through technology, if they become better at robotics and are able to produce more just through technology and automation, that can help solve this problem. Now, one of the big things when it comes to Japan that's often mentioned is they have some of the biggest indebtedness in the world when it comes to their federal debt. Federal debt owned by the public in Japan is about 200% of GDP, or the size of their economy. What happens, if the population is shrinking, the number of workers is shrinking, maybe Japan will default on that debt. What would be the consequence of that? Well, here's the thing. Most of Japan's debt is owned by households and businesses in Japan. So if the government defaults on the debt, what that means is owners of that debt, households and businesses, they just wouldn't get paid. Whereas everybody else, the populace that effectively owes the debt because they make up the nation, they would be off the hook. And so you kind of would have this big sort. There'd be a big shift in wealth because those that had these assets in terms of government bonds would be hurt, while those that owed the money, essentially the entire population, would be better off. But what wouldn't change is the overall wealth of the country. The ability of the country to produce goods and services would be the same. They would still have all the resources. Maybe there'd certainly probably be a big recession as they work through that transition. But it wouldn't be the end of the world, because the value of a country is their ability to produce goods and services, and how much they produce in terms of their output is, as we saw, as a function of how many workers they have and how productive those workers are. So that is what determines long-term economic growth. If you have any questions on this video, you can leave those in the comments below, and please subscribe to my channel. Thanks.